Turn up the volume a little bit. All right, let's begin. Looks like almost everybody here already submitted images, right? Pat did, Wendell did, Alan. Oh, you did as well. So just you two. Okay, no problem. Let me just do a quick review and then we'll go through those images and talk about those. So basically, I'm just reviewing what I sent out in the email earlier. When you want to do a composition, generally what you'll start doing is think of a concept for your final image. And at that point, you can decide if it's going to be crazy surreal or you're just putting a person in a background that they're not in or what have you. Some people like to do the background first when they're starting to compose it, so they kind of get a feel for the lighting and which everything's going as they start assembling things and color matching and so forth. Also lately, rather than just sketching on paper, a lot of people are going to Firefly or one of the, AI image generators and just throwing concepts at it to get ideas, and then possibly using pieces of that in your image if you want. That's another way to do it. Once you start composing, you can use generative fill and use the same kind of taglines that you were using in Firefly or just simple things. Say you want to add a cactus, say, you circle an area where you want cactus to say, I want a saguaro cactus, and it'll start throwing cactuses at you and you can pick one and go from there. If you are in Firefly, make sure you do photorealistic, otherwise you'll get more of a illustrative or painterly look if you're going to use anything from there. But just for concepting, might be fine if it's an illustration or a painting, and there's other things you could do. You can kind of just Google things as well. Go into Google Images and just say, I want to see, a mattress floating in space or something, and it'll probably find something. If it doesn't, then you can start doing Firefly and see where it goes.
So is Firefly a subscription?
No, it's an Adobe product and it's free at this point. It's the engine that, and the database they've been using for generative fill to a point, the same kind of technology. It's all AI. So once you gather everything that you need, and it's kind of nice to do, have your concept, gather what you need, put your background down, then start composing and putting everything together. And at that point, when you start finishing up, or maybe while you're working along the way, however you're comfortable, you might want to start color correcting and light correcting and making the object or element that you're putting into the background image match lighting and so forth. So maybe if there's no lighting on it, it's flat, you can start painting around the edges for highlights so you can see which way the light's coming from in the background and match that. And just work your way up. And then generally what a lot of people are doing now, which is kind of new, is they'll put a couple of finished layers on top of everything that's composed at the very top of the layers to add grain. So everything has an even grain. So if they're from different cameras, they have the same look. And they also do with a color gradient. So that basically it's got kind of a overall color feel across all the elements. So we'll go through a couple of examples so you can see that. But let's just take a quick look at a couple things here. So just to kind of get you in the groove, there's this little short one. Now this guy's starting with the subject. He obviously knows what his concept is because he's got all the elements in place. He's just going to go through it really quickly. So give me kind of the idea all the different things you can add. Now you see he's painting in the highlights because he knows the light sources. So behind the guy. He's painting light source on the shoulders. And the foreground images. With the carvings are really good. So kind of gives you a real quick 30,000 foot overview of what you can do. Okay. So this one's public, so I don't have any problems showing.
Hey there, and welcome to Flern. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find me on flern.com, where we make learning fun. And in today's video, we're going to create a simple composite, but it's also going to be super cool using just a couple of tools in Photoshop. We're going to show you how to combine different images together using blend modes like screen. We'll show you how to use smart objects and filters to make those images come together. And last but not least, we're going to show you how to add coloring and grain to bring everything together. Now, don't forget, you can download these sample images on flern.com. Just follow the link right down below. We got a great video. Let's jump into Photoshop. Here we are in Photoshop. Let's go ahead and open up our images. We've got 4 images for this tutorial because it's compositing. So let's go ahead and hit open. It's going to bring our images together. I'm going to hit Control or Command minus a couple of times on each one of these images, just to make it a little bit smaller. So we can see we've got a couple tents and some skies here. I've got a jellyfish, really cool image. And we've got our background here. So we're going to start off with our jellyfish. We don't need these other layers just yet. So let's just keep it simple. We'll do one at a time. So we're going to use my move tool. Take this jellyfish. I'm going to click and drag it from this document, boop, right over to this one. Check that out. So it's just on there now as a new layer. Let's hit F for full screen. That's just going to hide the rest of the stuff. I don't have to worry about it. And I want to get this jellyfish looking like it's in the sky. And we're going to create a few of these. Now, the first thing that I want to do real quick here is just add a layer mask, because I want this to kind of, you can see how it's just going to end really abruptly here if I don't use a layer mask. So let's go ahead and pop a layer mask on there. I'm going to paint black on my layer mask, and that just hides a layer. So right here, that thing there, that was, going to be super visible. All right, I'm not worried about doing the, like getting rid of the black background in this step. I'm just hiding the stuff that I really don't want to see. All right, that's a nice little blend is going to happen there. Good deal. So that's pretty much it. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and soften the edges of the layer. That's never a bad idea. It'll just make sure that you don't have any hard edges where your composite's kind of coming together.
So he's using a bigger brush than normal, and he's kind of just using the edge of it, and that kind of feathers his selection. You can see in this area here that it just softly goes here. It's not abrupt, as much as it would be with a smaller brush.
You'll see those edges, and that's a dead giveaway for a composite photo. So you can see here, see that little corner right down there? Boom, let's just paint that away. All right, so just painting black on our layer mask, that's how to hide part of your layer. Good deal. So to get this to blend in my image a little bit better, I need the black to disappear. I just want the lights to be visible. So we're going to change our blend mode to do that. Let's change here from normal. We're going to go down to screen blending mode. And what screen blending mode does is it makes all the dark areas of your layer invisible and leaves just light areas. So now I can go in here and do a little bit more fine tuning on these little fiber things that we got going on there. There we go. And our jellyfish is starting to look good. Not perfect just yet, but it's starting to look good. So I'm going to flip this upside down. Let's hit Control or Command T. We're going to right click and we're going to go to flip vertical. There we go. Let's do another one. Right click and go to flip horizontal there. All right. And I want kind of like a big one. I want one big one. This is gonna be kind of the start, but we're gonna make a few of these. So for now, let's hit Control Command J. That's just gonna make another one of these. And we're just gonna shrink it down. So let's hit Control Command T for our transform. We're gonna shrink you on down a little bit. We're gonna right click and go to flip horizontal. And then you know what? I don't want it to look like it's the exact same thing. So I'm gonna right click again and we're gonna go to warp. And warp just kind of allows me to like change the shape of this a little bit, you know, enough to where it's like probably gonna look like slightly different here. So you can make it a little bit longer, you can make it less long, you can do all kinds of fun stuff. Alrighty, that looks pretty good. So we're just gonna leave that one right about there. I think it kind of looks like weird glowing mushrooms coming out of the sky, which I'm okay with. Let's make another copy of this original layer here. So Control Command J on that one. I kind of like how it made it nice and bright. I'm gonna save that mentally for later. Alrighty, now we're gonna make this one nice and small. So Control Command T, this will be small. This is gonna kind of be coming, you know, up there, right? We gotta give it some depth. You know, we want some big, close to the sky here, and then we want some small, you know, kind of small away. So I'm going to duplicate this guy again, Control Command T. There we go. We'll make this one nice and real small here. They're going to be up there. I might even like fade that one away a little bit. Let's rotate it around, make it even smaller. At this point, mostly I'm just like thinking about my composition here. You know, I'm not necessarily thinking about, you know, trying to get everything blending perfect or whatever. I can do that in a little bit. Mostly I want everything to look cohesive. All right, let's go ahead and flip that horizontally. We're gonna right click and warp this one as well. We'll just like shrink it down a little bit. Okay. So I want it to look like actually different from the others. There we go. And let's go ahead and just pull it on this way a little bit more. All right. Good deal. So this is the step where, you know, you can kind of take your time with it. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit smaller too. You can kind of take your time and figure out about where you want to put all these things. There we go. I want it maybe even smaller. Because this is actually just like composition, right? There we go. And I'm just hitting Control Command T and kind of rotating these around. Nothing super crazy fancy going on there. Good deal. I feel like that's actually a decent place to start all of these to start my composite. Now, at this point, we're going to notice a few things. One, the jellyfish are in front of the trees, not behind the trees. Two, you can see all the stars, things like that, right behind the jellyfish. And three, if I look at these stars, you can see they have a little bit of a motion blur on them. And that's because this is a long exposure image. It's taken at night. So I want to duplicate that long exposure, and I want everything to blend together a little bit better. So what we're going to do to start with is I'm going to take all my jellyfish layers. So we're going to go ahead and shift click all of those layers. Now I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to convert to smart object. Okay, so it's going to take away any kind of blending mode that you had on those individual layers. Not a big deal. I'll just change it back again. So we'll just go from normal down to screen again. But there we go, screen. What's nice about this all being a smart object is I can treat all of these jellyfish as one. But if I wanted to move them, no big deal. You could just double click right here on the layer for your smart object and you can move them around. And then you can just hit Control or Command S to save. And in this case, I'm not going to. It would update automatically, which is super cool. So everything actually looks pretty good now. Let's go ahead and focus on getting these jellyfish behind the trees. So we're going to make the layer invisible. We'll click on our background. I'm going to go to select color range. We're going to click right here on the trees. Now in this case, we're going to bring our fuzziness down a little bit. There we go. And that's looking pretty good. Basically, I just need to make sure that the trees are selected. In this case, they're light and my background is dark. So that actually looks pretty good. I'm going to hit OK, which is going to basically turn all this light area into a selection. Hit OK there. Now we're going to turn back our jellyfish. We're going to turn them back on. And because I already have a selection active, all I have to do is click on my layer mask icon and my selection is going to load into the layer mask. Now it's the opposite of what we want. no big deal. Just click on your layer mask and hit Control or Command I to invert. Now I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click on that layer mask because I just want to edit it a little bit. Basically, I'm going to grab my lasso tool and just make a selection right around here. Boop. Very easy. We'll go to Edit, down to Fill, and we're going to fill that with white. So we'll just choose white here. Hit OK.
So, Wendy, you follow what he's doing with the color range there? Basically, he selected the trees and then he used fuzziness to kind of see, it'll let either add more to the selection or less to the selection. You can also hit a plus and then with your eyedropper, pick more colors in the range that you want to select, you know, darker or lighter, till you go what you want. And sometimes if you can't get the edge soft enough or get it to where you want, you'll get more, it's better to get more than what you need, which is what happened with the sky there. But it's easy to fix. I mean, you just go in there and select it and erase it. So that's how he created that mask using that older technique.
There we go. And then I'm going to hit B for the brush tool. We're going to change our blend mode from normal to overlay. And I'm going to paint with white right over here too. And you're going to see how, because I'm in overlay blending mode, it's going to take these light areas and just make them even lighter, but it's going to kind of leave the dark areas alone. So I'm using this, you can see another patch here. I'm using this to kind of take care of any of those like patchy areas, but it's going to kind of leave my tree line alone. Alrighty, just make sure you change your brush back to normal when you're done. So we have a really nice layer mask of the trees. Let's hold Alt or Option and click on that layer mask. Pretty cool, huh? Now, if I want to like hit this unlock button, I can unlock my layer and my layer mask. Now I could just move my layer around and check this out. Everything's going to be behind these trees. So you could even make like an animation like, woo. There we go. That's a lot of fun. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to make it look like they've got a little bit of a motion blur applied to them. So on my layer, we're going to go to Filter, Blur, and down to Motion Blur. There we go. Now I want to kind of match the angle, the same kind of angle as what's going on in the stars. That was a bit of a too much of a motion blur. So we'll just add like maybe around 10 pixels. Let's hit OK there. Now, because it's a smart object, I can just turn this motion blur off and on at any time if I need to. There we go. But I think that just helps it kind of look more like the sky itself.
If it's a smart object, you can adjust it. So if you find later it's not enough or too much of a blur, you can go in and fix it if it's a smart object like this, which is really nice. And you can keep stacking more things. You can see they come down underneath the layer.
Oh,
So here it's saying smart filters because they're not permanent. And then below that, you see it's got motion blur. So if you want, you can just click on that motion blur again and it'll bring up the box to interact, and you can change the angle if you want. You can make it more, you can make it less, you can do whatever you want. Do you have a question, Dave? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to give this to you guys too, and then I'm going to go through a little build after. Maybe what I'll do is I'll look at your stuff and then we'll go through that critique, and then I'll just build a simple one using some of these techniques when we're done. Okay.
Alrighty. Now we got one more cool thing that I want to do, and this is actually going to be with a duplicate of my background layer. Let's hit Control or Command J on the background layer. I want to kind of make these stars that are behind the jellyfish look like they're being kind of like warped. Like if you were to look through a glass of water, it kind of warps what's behind it. I want to do that with these stars. So what we're going to do is we have our background copy here. I'm going to go to Filter. We're going to go down to Liquify. Okay, so running a Liquify filter. Now, here are my view options. I just want to make sure I show backdrop. All right, and all layers sounds good. I want this to be in front of what I'm doing, and then I can kind of like change what I've got going on here. All right, so the tool that we're going to be using is going to be the bloat tool, which just like pushes things outwards. So if I don't show backdrop, you can see if I just click here and kind of bloat it out, that's kind of the idea, right? We're just going to kind of push things out. Now, because we have show backdrop open, I can actually see what I'm doing a little bit more. And we're just going to kind of like push these out just to make it look like a little bit of a, you know, little bit of a graphic type effect is happening. There we go. You can't just like see straight through there. All right, we'll hit OK. So just a nice little fun effect that I think just makes it look a little bit like, you know, these are kind of warping the effect. Now, it doesn't look perfect just yet, but we're going to work on that a little bit. Well, the next thing that I want to do is add a little bit more of a light effect. I want to kind of make it look like there's a galaxy inside of each one of these jellyfish. So for that, we're going to go ahead and exit out of our full screen view. And I want to bring in this image. So let's use our move tool. We're going to click and drag from one image to another and hit F for full screen. Look at that. Already looking cool. Now, on this image, we're going to change our blend mode from normal down to screen again. And I want this to kind of be in the middle of each of these jellyfish. Looking pretty good, but the lights are just a little bit too light in this. So I'm going to hit Controller Command L for our levels. Just make it a tiny bit dark. Cool. That just makes the general background disappear a little bit more. Now, in this case, I'm not super interested in like this photo as a whole. Let's hit Controller Command T. We're just going to shrink this down just a little bit. There we go. And really all I want is like the central Milky Way part of this photo. So let's just pop it back into normal blending mode and put it on top so we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to click on my layer mask icon. All right. And we're just going to paint black on our layer mask because I just don't really need the whole image to be visible. I'm just kind of want this like Milky Way area here. And I definitely don't want this little tree line to be visible. So I'm going to just layer mask that out there. All right, and we'll make a soft, large brush to kind of like fade it out from there. All right, so I want this like Milky Way effect to like look like it's coming from the jellyfish. Just like move it around and make sure you don't, you know, gotta look for those corners. Like, you know, are any of my corners visible? If they are, just paint it. See what? Look at that. Visible corners, just paint it away black on the layer mask. Okay, well that looks pretty good. Now let's change this from a normal to a screen blend mode. I'm going to hit Controller Command T and we're just going to start by rotating this around. There we are. And we're just going to use our move tool to kind of like put this inside of the little jellyfish. There we go. Now, obviously you can kind of like do any type of effect you really want here. I'm just kind of, there we go. Let it kind of fade in there a little bit, something like that. And you know what? Let's maybe make it a little bit larger. Cool. This kind of makes it look like there's, you know, like a light source coming from inside of the jellyfish. And also it just adds another fun little color in there too.
Okay, there we go.
T to duplicate it, we'll just make it nice and small. And we're just going to put this in a few of the other jellyfish here. So they're each getting their own like lighting effect. It's kind of a trippy looking image here. I feel like I should do like a parental advisory. Do not. Ooh, yeah, I like this little things in there. All right. Parental advisory. This image does in no way endorse the use of psychedelics or anything else. It's like natural. Here we go. Let's right click and orbit it. Like I feel like, ooh, right now. That's looking pretty cool. So we have all those little effects, all our little Milky Way galaxies in there. I think we're looking great. Now, I want to give it a little bit of scale and a little bit of perspective. And we're going to do that by adding like a tent into the foreground. Plus, it's going to give it another color, which in my opinion is just going to help everything kind of like even out a little bit more. So let's hit Shift Command F for Shift F to get out of full screen. And we're going to be bringing this image in. So we'll just use our move tool and click and drag from one to another. Hit F for full screen. Alrighty, now this layer, we can do the same thing like we've been doing. We'll just change it from normal down to screen blend mode. Good deal. And I'm going to hit Controller Command T. We're just going to scale this on down. All right, not too small. Figure out about where we want it. I'm going to go just a little bit bigger to start with. There we go. And let's hold Alt or Option. We're going to click on our layer mask, and that just makes an all black layer mask. Perfect. And then we can kind of paint white on our layer mask wherever we want visible. But we'll just get like a little bit of this kind of foreground in there you know, wherever we want. All right, let's zoom out here. Looking pretty good. It's just a little bit too large right now, so I'm just gonna make this a little smaller and kind of put this in the foreground there. Actually, I kind of liked it that large. Maybe we'll make it even larger. All right, that's looking pretty good there. Now, the color is decent. It's a little bit on the yellow side. I want it to be a little bit more orangey. So let's just click on our layer. All right, we're gonna make another layer right above it. Let's go to a hue saturation adjustment layer. Go ahead and clip that by clicking on this layer, or by clicking on the clipping mask icon rather. And then I'm gonna just shift my color here to a little bit more orangey.
You guys all understand what a clipping does? Rather than that particular correction affecting everything below it, it'll, see how it's shifted over to the right? And there's like a 90-degree turn. It means it's only gonna affect the layer that's below it, that it's clipped to or connected to. I guess connection would be probably a better term here, or joined. So once you do that clip, whatever you do on that adjustment only affects that layer below it. So in this case, the 10. So now he's gonna change the color using hue and saturation.
And something like that looks pretty great. Now, at this point, we're a little disorganized, so let's go ahead and group those two layers. We're gonna shift click the two of those, group them together. We'll just call this camp. Alrighty. Here we have, let's go ahead and these are all of our galaxy. There we go. And here we have our jellyfish. It looks fantastic.
So that keeps you organized. So basically what you do is you click on one, hold the shift key down, click on everything that you want in that particular group. And then you hit Command G, and that makes a folder and puts it all in the folder. Then you can name that folder. And it just makes it easier to organize and scroll around, because as you start getting layer after layer after layer, you gotta kind of go up and down and look for things. This makes it a lot more organized and easier to use. And then there's like a little fly out pointer in front of the mask that you just tap, and that'll open everything that's in that particular group folder.
Oh, yeah, so you can adjust one part of it.
Exactly, so you can select it like a regular layer. And the other thing you can do is you can move them around, because sometimes the hierarchy of what's on top of what in a layer will affect how it looks. So you can actually go in there and change what the order that they're in. Okay.
So I'm pretty happy with this composite as of yet. A couple of things though, I just want to bring the colors together a little bit more. And one of my favorite ways to do that is by using a gradient map. So let's go ahead and grab a new adjustment layer. This is going to be on the top of everything. So gradient map on the top of everything. We're going to click here on our gradient editor. And I'm just going to start by creating my own little gradient. So on the left is going to be black. We're going to start with the right side is going to be pure white here. And what that does is just basically takes the darks in your image and maps them to the left, and the lights in your image and maps them to the right. So right up here, let's make that like a yellowy color. There we go, like a bright yellow. Okay, that looks pretty cool. Over here, we're gonna shift this a little bit more towards like a teal, go a little bit darker. There we are. And let's click over here. We'll make this like a dark kind of bluish. There we go, maybe a little bit lighter. All right, and that actually looks pretty good. We're gonna hit okay there. Now, obviously this is like a pretty strong effect. It's on our entire photograph. So you can see it does bring the colors together. However, it's like a little bit too much. So my suggestion would be just to lower your opacity a little bit. So let's take that opacity slider. We'll just bring it down a little bit. And this kind of gives you the best of both worlds. So you still get some of the coloring that brings everything together in the end, but you still get some of the original color of the image too. All right, we'll bring that opacity down a little bit more. And in this case, I'm just gonna paint over like this tent a little bit, just paint black over this layer mask. That's just gonna let some of the original color, a little bit more of that color show through. This looks pretty cool. Now I'm gonna take my levels real quick. We're gonna go to our blue channel. There we go. Let's bring up some output levels in here. It's gonna put some blues into my shadows, and you can see it here. Okay, and it's gonna do it over top of my entire image, and then some yellows into my highlights. Not too much with this, but again, it's just gonna bring everything together. Alrighty, we're almost done. The last step is to add a little bit of grain. And we do this because we have like, this image and, our jellies and basically just a bunch of different composite images. And they don't look like they were all taken like with the same camera at the same time. And by throwing just a little bit of grain over top of everything, it kind of like puts it together. It's easy to do too. So we're going to create a new layer on top of everything. Alrighty. Well, let's go to edit down to fill. We're going to fill this with 50% gray. Okay. We'll go to filter down to noise. I'm going to go to add noise. Let's just crank it up. Nice amount of noise there. And we're going to change our layer blend mode from normal to soft light. So come on down here to soft light. And here you can see there's our noise kind of over top of everything. There we go. And when you zoom out, it doesn't look like so harsh, but it does have the effect of just kind of like bringing everything together. You can see here in the campfire. If it's too much noise, no big, just change your opacity, lower that a little bit, and you're good to go. All right. Well, there we have our fun composite image. So cool. And it really didn't take that long. Let's just go back through it one more time. So everything invisible. We started off with our jellyfish, and those are just, it's a smart object with screen blending mode. And we used a layer mask to make it look like it's behind the trees. We added a motion blur, and that's what helps it make it look like it's got the same kind of shift as the stars in the sky. It just helps it make it look more realistic. Then I wanted to make it look like the stars are kind of like warping behind the jellyfish. So we just did a duplicate of our background layer and ran a liquefy effect, which just kind of warped them back there. I think it's fun. Now, you lost a little bit of definition here, but no bigs, because we're just going to add our galaxies right back over top of that, which gives it a cool effect and kind of makes it pretty trippy, but I'm totally into it. Then we just added our camp, and we didn't do any like crazy fancy layer masking here. A lot of this was just done with screen blending modes, which I think is great. And we pulled everything together with a little bit of a gradient map for colors, some levels adjustments on the shadows and highlights, and then added some noise. And that really just kind of makes it look like, you can see, just all looks like it's one photograph. Now, of course, at this level of zoom in, it's way too much noise, but when you're further zoomed out, it looks nice. Well, there we have it. Didn't take long, and we made a super fun composite in Photoshop. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to get more just like this one, hit that subscribe icon, because we release free tutorials literally every single week. And
There we go. Couple other things you can do with the noise layer. You can make that gray layer a smart object, and then when you add the noise, you can put it up, and if it's too much or not enough, you can adjust it, just like you could with the blur on the jellyfish. So the other thing I like to do is take a little bit of the curse off of it because it's really harsh. I put a little bit of a Gaussian blur on it, like maybe a 0.3 or 0.4, just to soften it down and mesh it into the image a little bit.
Just on the grain or the noise layer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Dave.
Andy, I'm thinking of your Tumacacari picture where the temple was daytime and then you added the night sky.
Correct.
So you went through all this
Yeah.
to create that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, and again, I had to match, so it was a nighttime scene, and I shot that silo or whatever it is near the graveyard in broad daylight, so I had to really darken it down and change the contrast to make it look like it was
Yeah,
night.
the whole thing looks like one shot. It
Well,
really does.
That's the end,
It's amazing.
that's the end result, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And some believability because it's a photograph, but get carried away, obviously, it gets into fantasy or surrealism, depending on where you go. Okay, let's take a look at some of the things you guys have been doing. All right, let me hide this real quick. Okay,
See, that's pretty involved. That's pretty involved.
yeah, that's medium advanced, and this is, he's thrown pretty much everything but the kitchen sink in there.
And I think if you follow that, right, step by step,
You start learning what he's doing, and it'll advance your finessing. I mean, most of that, if you wanted to just get to an okay level, you could just composite stuff and use screen blend mode and pretty much be there. Nice, as you can see in a nighttime scene using screen, you don't have to worry about all that black edging. That's, masking the thing. Yeah, you just kind of rough it out and most of it goes away. Any hard edge you'll see, that's why he looked around for his corners or edges of the images and made sure those are gone, because those will show up like a sore thumb. Okay, so let's,
Pretty interesting.
yeah, I guess we'll start with you, since you're here.
That's easy for him to say.
Doesn't take long, you know what you're doing.
All right, well, let's see what you got here on. Okay, why don't you tell us about that?
Well, this is two images obviously, so I actually saw this on the internet and I thought it would be a good thing to try and emulate, so I've got, took both of these photos. First one, the one with the trees is the winter up in Calgary, and then the truck is from Ruby Road.
Hmm.
And I was actually just planning and doing a black and white one, which is right below it.
Mhm.
But I thought I'd bring both of them in there just to see, I think I prefer just the black and white one.
Yeah, here's the black and white.
Kind of ghostly looking.
Mhm.
I like that color on there.
Mhm.
So what do you guys think? Colors better?
Yeah,
You get a little more separation.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Another thing you might want to do is to take the trees and cool them off a little bit.
Cool them off. Yeah.
Yeah, that might give you some. Let's just see something here real quick. If we,
I mean, there's really not a lot, I mean, that's nothing compared to what I organized.
yeah. Yeah,
And I think, it's probably not in this one, I did a little bit of, fog or haze to the
Mhm.
bottom of
Mhm.
the version.
yeah, I'm just curious, just using color grading. Or actually a gradient map. If we go in here. And if you click on the ramp itself, just, that brings up your editor. And at that point, you can start here with white. Yeah, that's white. Okay. And then we can add another one here, start on that, maybe make your highlights toward that rust feel. So somewhere in, maybe in here. Maybe a little oranger. Maybe somewhere in there. Yeah, okay. Hit okay. Then maybe somewhere in the middle here, we'll start going to cool. Okay, so we click on that, double click on it actually. And maybe we might want to start cooling things off. Somewhere in this range here. Okay. And then this last one, we can kind of go for the dark blue. Okay. Now this looks kind of funky. So if you take your blend mode to overlay or soft light, you can start getting some interesting things going that way. But just see which one works the best for you. You kind of roll through them. Maybe even multiply might work out. You know,
I like that, actually.
yeah. And if you want to adjust from there, just double click on it. Maybe you might want to, have more blue, which is what we're going for. So kind of work it that way. It's pretty interactive, but it doesn't really happen until you let go. So you got to kind of take a guess of where you want it to be and then let go, and then it'll update. Yeah, yeah. And you can even pull your darks down a little bit. So there you go.
That's only affecting the darker parts of the.
Well, it's affecting the lights too, but you know, see how the light bark is staying kind of warm because of this? Yeah, yeah. So you can play with it that way. And then the other thing you can do is play with your opacity. Just
No,
decide.
that's what I was doing.
Mhm. Yeah, just kind of play around. And then again, maybe you might want to play with your, you know, with your blend modes. So we're on multiply before, maybe linear burn might work better, or maybe you might want to go the other way and just kind of just do a subtle overlay. But yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yep. So that gives you some ways to kick it up a little bit.
Good, thank you.
Mhm.
Are we recording this so I can kind of?
Yeah.
Turn it up and do it?
Yes, we are. Okay, so.
So that's another question here. If that were a double exposure, you would be getting a similar effect, would you? There's obviously two different images taken at different
Mhm.
times.
Yeah, you could put one of those in between each one. So like if you just wanted to play with the trees, you could
Right.
do that gradient or even a color correction for that matter to that. Or, you know, if you could clip it to it as well. So it only affects it if it's somewhere up the chart. Like if that car is in front of the trees, then you may want to clip your correction to the car so it doesn't affect the trees. But if the trees was your background, you could put another layer with the correction or the gradient there. It's not gonna affect what's above it, being the car, so you don't have to worry about clipping it. But once you get to the car, you're gonna have to clip it, otherwise it'll affect the trees as well. You guys follow that? It's a little confusing. Okay. Let me show you that real quick. Okay, so I was playing around with this image a little bit. Basically, I just added a helicopter in there. So basically, I started with this background. I played around with a little bit of correction, and then I added this helicopter, masked it out, and using normal as my blend mode. I added a drop shadow on there, just to put it on the building, just like it's going over and the lighting's adding it. So, but then I clipped this gradient map to it, see how it affects just the helicopter itself. Kind of brings it into the same color vein here. So basically that map is just a little dark and light. And after I got everything to that point, I selected all the layers, you know, holding a shift key down. And then I went to Command Option Shift E. And that makes another layer with all those in it. So basically, this is the same as everything that's underneath it. And then I took that because I wanted to work it up a little more, and I went into using Camera Raw. Get the column here. And then in Camera Raw, I just played around with it a little bit. You know, I took the, you know, highlights and messed with them a bit.
So in camera raw here, is that affecting all of the layers here or just?
No, it's just affecting the one. It'll only affect one layer when you're at this point. So to do that, I took all these layers and selected them and combined them into a single layer. That's how I got to that. And after using Camera Raw, I ended up with this. Just by, now let's just go through it real quick. So we go to filter, Camera Raw. You know, you can play around a little bit in here and So maybe I went into effects a little bit and I kicked up a little texture and some clarity and a little dehaze. And then I decided to do a little vignette. And on the vignette, I took it down pretty hard and then I left it a highlight priority. I decided where I wanted my midpoint, how round or where I wanted it to be. I kind of wanted a little up like that. I feathered it out. And then I brought it back a little bit. And then you can see the whites are kind of muddy, so I took the highlights, and brought those back up just a little bit. Okay. And the other thing, I can't remember, I think I might have, pulled the highlights down a little bit, added a little white back. Give a little contrast. See, because now I can work on the whole image. I've not tried this, but I could group it and see if that would work. Let's try that. I've not tried that before, just for grins. Let's take everything we did here and group it by hitting Command G. Group. I don't know. It's not. That's interesting. I don't know what's going on with this. Try that another time. But at any rate, I got them all together so I could do that. I think it was a little more subtle than this one. And then I just took a gradient map on that. Now, if I turn this off, it wouldn't be as effective as taking all the layers below, grouping together, putting it through camera raw, and then doing the final gradient map there. So kind of give you an idea of the different ways you can do it. See why my hotkeys aren't working. Oh. We didn't even get the hide to work. Okay, let's see what else you guys got here. I'll lift your images in there for next week.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, so let's go to Pat here.
Connection of last week was hopeless.
Yeah, that was kind of, oh, I see, you got some Photoshop going on here. You know what? Let me kill that.
Well, I didn't know if it would open up the layers. That's why I included the Photoshop.
Okay.
Oh. I didn't lose that one when.
We'll update that another time.
1 minute. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Leave tomorrow morning at 4. So thanks for all your advice and got all those cards.
have a good
Yeah,
time.
with my trip to Japan
Okay,
and
well,
everything.
it'll all work if it doesn't send me a text. Remember, you're 16 hours ahead. Okay.
That's in my head.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So the brown pelicans were shot the same time
Mhm.
when we were in San Diego, but different time of day.
Mhm.
And coloring was not. I don't know if I would have flipped them, if
Well, they almost look like they're lit more from above than from way over here.
well,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what you could do is go in there and darken one side on them, and that would help out a little bit.
I tried to paint them,
Mhm.
and it was helping me,
Mhm.
and it just, well, but it, maybe I went overboard on the one pelican on the right there.
Mhm. Well, here's a couple tricks you can do. So let's get into curves, which are a little difficult. Well, you know what? Let's do one with levels and one with curves, just so we can see the difference here. All right, so If you want to darken the one side down, you can do that. I see it changes the saturation too, so when you do anything like that, and it's working on the whole image, so the first thing we want to do is clip it with this little guy here. So that clips it just to the pelicans. So you can see just the pelicans are being affected, right? Okay, and then with the mask, we're gonna just invert it. So we're gonna click on the mask. And we're just gonna do Command I, which will invert it. So it's all black. So now, we'll turn it off, nothing's happening. And then we're gonna get a brush, okay? And make sure white's in the foreground instead of black. You can just hit your X key to change those, or you can hit this double-headed arrow. And then we're just gonna brush it in on the side that we want to darken.
So you're painting with white.
Yeah, but just in the mask. So that's just affecting that area, okay? So it's only letting the correction through where I paint it.
Only what, Sandy?
It's only letting the selection, the correction through where I'm painting it. Because I'm doing it through this mask. So the black's hiding everything. Here, let me show you what it looks like. So that's the only place it's letting that through. And I can be sloppy because it's not affecting the background because this is clipped only to the pelicans. So it gives you the option of not having to worry about being precise and the mask and everything. So that it's a nice way to do it. The other nice thing when you do something like this, rather than dodging and burning with a dodge and burn tool, is if it's too light or too dark, all you got to do is go in and click on the double click on the adjustment and change it. So I can make it darker or lighter just by doing that. Now the other thing it's that we were going to discuss that I glossed over is anytime you start shifting colors drastically, you're going to change the saturation too. If you change the blend mode to just luminosity, see what happens? That's without luminosity and that's with it. You don't get that saturation problem. This is only changing light or dark. It's not changing saturation. So that's always a good thing to do.
Say that again.
Okay. In your blend mode, if you leave it normal, you see how saturated? Let me just bring this up so you can get a clearer picture of it. See how saturated that pelican is? I turn this on and off. You can see it's really saturated. It's not only darkening it, but saturating it. So if you change the blend mode from normal all the way down here to luminosity, now you see that it's just making it darker. See? So that's a good tool to have. And then the other thing is need a little more masking on this, you'll be in good shape. Looks like you left in the triangle there. Okay.
And I have a comment.
Y'all do.
Pat, the image is beautiful. I just wonder, would you consider making the pelicans a little larger? What do you think, Sam?
You certainly can. I mean, when you're doing composing, and you're doing it on layers, it gives you the ability to do just that. Now, another cool thing,
And they were larger to begin with. Right?
yeah,
We're larger. Just for focus, I'm thinking,
I guess I maybe put them that size so that they weren't the part that drew your eye to. If it's a sunset that I want your eye
to
to
emphasize.
yeah. Problem is, the mask is moving with it, right? The mask didn't move, but they moved. So let's get out of this. And what we'll do is we'll hold our shift key down for both. Let's try group again. Now group's working. I don't know why it didn't before. Maybe it's because it had the effects layer on there. Okay, maybe I needed to select the effects layer separately. All right, so we can just call this birds or something like that. So now we've got birds. So now when you hit the Command T, you're moving everything at once. So you don't have to worry about things going out of register here. Okay. So maybe you want to make them a little bigger and put them down here. Maybe and have a couple of them going off the frame, move them in a little bit, kind of make them a feature. You can do that. And here's the little fly arrow I was talking about before. Now you can grab all these and do what you want with them. So if I want to go back and work on this, I can do it. If I want to add something else, I could say maybe now we want to add a curves layer. If something's clipped below it and you add another adjustment, it'll clip it as well. You don't have to clip every time, which is kind of nice. So now I can grab and make this darker, but no, it's doing the whole thing. So it should have clipped it. You could put it down here and then it'll clip it. I don't want to confuse you. So let's do this. We're going to clip it again. I'm going to just grab the midpoint, but if you look here on the graph on the histogram, most of your data is here. So the center point, I'm going to move over here a little bit. I'm just going to make the birds overall just a little darker. Okay. And the other thing I want to do is, I don't know if you guys know how curves work, but basically the point down here is your darkest point, your blackest black, and the point up here is your whitest white. And this is your midpoint. Out here would be quarter tones, and this would be 3/4 tones. So if I wanted to just pull the highlights down a little bit, I grab this and just take it down a little bit. So they're just not so bright. And then I can adjust different areas.
That's just working on the pelicans.
Correct. And see, that's bringing them more into it. They were just way too light before. Now, the other thing you can do is if you use this little point guy and you go right where you want to pick, it'll show you on the graph where that point is. You can also just click and it'll add a point there. You hit delete, you can get rid of the other point. So if you want to be a little more precise, you do that. Now, if you start pulling too hard, what happens is, see the other side's coming up here? So to avoid that, you just add another point and anchor it down. Because you want to keep your curve as smooth as possible. If it gets out of whack and you start getting this post-rise effect. If you like that, which Dave probably does, that's how to do it. Yeah, but if you don't want it in, if it's inappropriate or something, then you can just work that way. Okay. That might be just a little too dark. So let's bring it up just a wee bit here. There we go. Now we're working in RGB. If you want to just work in a color channel, you've got all these separate channels. So if we wanted to warm this up, the opposite of blue is yellow, right? So if we pull down, it's going to go bluer. If we pull up, it's going to go warm. Or I'm sorry, the other way around. So that's blue. That's warmer. So maybe you want to warm these guys up a little bit. Maybe just in the highlights. You pull up here on the top. And maybe you might want to add the opposite of green's magenta, or there's just red. You got to be a little careful with the red sometimes. Let's just grab the very top and we'll pull the red up just a bit. That kind of warms them up. So here these guys are. And also sometimes when you start messing with just the color channels, it might make it all a little light overall. So if that's the case, you may want to just darken it down a little bit again. All right. So that's what this is doing. I think that helps. Okay.
Sandy?
Yep.
Can these programs go from black and white to color? Or it always has to start? at
Start in
black?
color and you can go black and white from there. So basically, what you can do on top of all this is just, let's close this up real quick. And we'll just, under this layer where you have all your different types of adjustments, you just go to black and white. That'll make it black and white. Now, black and white, in the old days with filters, you could change the film by using reds or greens or blue. But this gives you way more. You've got, all these different colors and you can combine them all at the same time. So you've got the advantages that you didn't have with just one filter back in the day. So if you see what your reds are doing, you can adjust that. Yellows. Not much green in there. You might have yeah. Yeah, you got a little blue in the water there. So you can get a little more detail over here. Magenta, let's see, not so much. And then if you double click, it zeroes it out. Okay.
That makes it nice black and white. Yeah. Gets away from the different warmth and coolness.
Yeah.
It does. They should.
Yeah. And if you want to do selective color, you've got a mask here. So you can just select black as your foreground color, get a brush, and just, paint it where you want some color. So your creativity is endless. You can just do whatever you want.
Wow.
Getting a little crazy here, but you get the idea. Okay.
And that one, I put the rocks in the boat.
Mhm.
Boat, I couldn't work on.
Yeah, yeah.
And the rocks were, I had done light painting several years ago. And I thought the tones of the rocks were the same as the sunset.
Mm-hmm. Is this rock a separate layer?
Yeah.
Okay, so you could,
Well, they
so you
separate-
could color correct that and play with it. And if there's several of them, you can group them together. So let's do that.
Wendell, can I group in elements?
All right, so,
I think that works.
yeah. All right, so here we're looking at rocks. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, that's a boat. There's another one. The other thing, when I tend to group, I usually move it down so that everything's all together. So the boat's separate. So then you can take this, hold your shift key down, grab this, Command G, and there's your group. You can just double click it and call it rocks. There. So you've got them all there. Now you can just take a correction on that. Let's get a curve again. And let's just see if we can clip that to the group. Yeah. So we clipped it to the rocks group. So it's see, it's just working on the rocks. And again, if you're just drastically darkening something, you're going to get a lot of saturation. So again, we just take this down to luminosity here. See, you don't get that nasty saturation going. You just get the darkness.
Well, I have to say, this has been a very intensive,
This is the tip of the iceberg. If you guys want to continue this way, I think it might be good. We can do a little bit of both, where you guys, I can guide you on how to shoot the elements if you want, and then we can do some more compositing. Would you guys like to bring in your computers? Do you have elements on your computer at home? You guys want to bring your computers in? I can get some desks in here and power supplies, and we can actually work on the things, and I can kind of look over your shoulder and give you a helping hand if you want. Is that something you guys might want to do?
Yeah.
I brought my project in on printed paper.
Oh,
to give
good.
Your instruction,
All right.
so maybe you can look at it.
Yeah, let's look at it when we're done here.
Yeah.
And I think it might be nice for everybody to see that because that's the analog way of doing it. So, yeah, all right. Well, I'll save that for you. All right. That we've seen. Let's just quit that. Okay.
Oh,
Oh, let's go back.
well, that's really cool, Pat. That's the picture.
That's where the pelicans came from.
Mhm. You might want to include the rock next time.
Well, you know, I did select subject and it. I was doing it here, and for some reason it would not allow me, after I selected subject, to select the rock.
Well,
So I suppose I put it down on
What-
layers.
well, no, what you end up doing is after you select subject, you have it selected mask. And then when you go into, then you can go into the mask and paint with white and bring that rock back. Cause it's all black and white.
Well, but it just selected the birds, it didn't.
No, I
select the
understand. Yeah, that's just the beginning. Basically, select subject just kind of gets you in that direction and hopefully gets the hard parts for you. And then after that, you have to add and subtract from there.
Well, and I tried that, but it would not allow me to.
All
add
right,
the rock.
let's do that real quick. All right.
No.
All right, all right, so here, I'll do this and maybe we'll just kind of, yeah. So there's this guy. Hold the shift key down, there's this guy. Hold the shift key down, there's this guy. See that little plus when I hold the shift key down? And, all right, there, and now you got it all. That's the way to do it. Okay. And then you mask it. All right.
So the rock is included in it.
Yeah, if you keep adding. Do you have that feature in Elements or not?
Well, I should have been able to, once I select.
All right, let's go the old fashioned way here. All right, so I'm gonna select this pelican. Let's just say when you did select subject, it selected these four guys and maybe this guy. All right. So you got all that. I'm gonna unlock that and then I'm gonna hit this, which means make a mask. So there's your mask, okay? Nothing behind it. Usually there's a black and white squares. I don't like them, so I just turn it all white. That's just my preference. Okay, on the mask, first of all, if you hold the shift key down and click on it, gives you the image back so you can kind of see what you're doing. If you get a brush, okay, up here, and you paint with white, you can kind of add to it. So, and make sure it's at 100%. So I'm just gonna hit 0. It was at 40. There you go. We'll make it a little bigger. And I'm just gonna bring that in.
That puts the rock with birds.
Yeah, but I'm overshot a little bit. So I'm gonna hit the X key, make it black, and then I'm gonna make a smaller brush by hitting my bracket key. And I'm just gonna go in here and make a hard edge. Okay. Or if you don't want any of that, you can knock it out. There you go. So that's the other way to do it. Now it looks like we didn't get it down here as well as I would like, so let's just fill that in. So I was talking about, now we're seeing this just on white, it'll make it a little easier. Use a really big brush with a soft edge. If you click up here on your brush, you make your hardness down to 0. Make your brush however big you want it. And if you take your opacity down to like maybe 30%, you can subtly bring things in and have a nice soft edge, see? So that's a good way to blend things. if you ever want to do that. So say I wanted to. Oh, let's get this one. I just wanted to take this and drag it over here. Put it behind it. There you go. And I wanted to blend it, between the two pretty seamlessly. Then what I can do is just use that brush to just kind of tickle it in there. Get that little double exposure going if I want. By using your X key, see how these go back and forth? You can either add or take away. So if I wanted to, maybe go down to 20, maybe I wanted to go some of this through, I have a kind of like a double exposure, I could do that. Or if I want to go the other way, I'll hit the X and then get a little smaller brush, and maybe I don't want this part to be so much. So you can just kind of feather back and forth and bring the areas through you want and paint back the areas you don't want. And adjust your composite that way. Oops. That was weird. Just kind of dumped out of that, didn't I? Okay.
How about Sandy? That seemed to be so easy to pop a scene behind the Pelicans. How about put her sunset right behind the Pelicans?
Yeah, if it was on a separate
that-
layer. Well, let's see.
But yeah, would it have been easier to do it the other way? I put the background on first.
Yeah, I would put the background on first and build the objects in there, because then you can make them the size you want and then start blending back and forth.
So if we left the Pelicans the size that they were, and like you put your picture behind them,
Well, here,
Yeah.
is this, oh, that's just the background for that. Yeah, we could do that. Just depends on what you want.
they would be way too big, I think.
They could be. That's why I'd start with the background. So let's take this background. Okay, so we'll go the other way. So we're gonna take the background, then we're gonna click on this image and let's get this out of the way here. We click this. I'm just gonna grab this layer, which is the birds, and drag it over here. Now we've got them here. Okay, now I'm gonna hit my move tool. Let me clear some of this stuff out so that you're just seeing the birds. All right, so if you click on the image itself, and then you go up to your move tool here, you can move it around, get it where you kind of want it. Maybe we kind of want it big like that. And then if you hit Command T, that's your transform, maybe that's what you're looking for. And hit return, and then make sure your mask is highlighted, not your image, because if your image is highlighted, you're gonna paint black or white on it. Okay, so make sure you're on your mask. If that happens and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm painting on the image here,
And,
just undo it, okay? And then go get on the mask layer, which is where you want to be, and go back there and start painting it back in. Or doing whatever you want with the mask.
Sandy, why does the sunset scene come on the top of it? I thought it would be behind.
Well, it is behind it, but the pelicans here, anywhere that it's not black or white is gonna be a blend. So basically, it's almost like turning the opacity down. So really, you're seeing the sunset behind it coming through because this area is gray. You know, here, let me just quickly, with a brush. And I'm gonna take that up to 0 here. I'm just gonna paint white here and you'll see the difference. I'm just gonna paint right here. Okay. So now when I click on this, see how it doesn't come through anymore? Or, and it does on the others? Okay, so you can blend with a mask, you can isolate with a mask. You can just have your color correction hit what you want with a mask. Yeah, your mask makes it more selective than just letting it go through a little blast across the whole image.
Would it be easy just to turn that all to a silhouette right now, the birds?
Oh, yeah, sure. You can do anything you want with them. But yeah, we go back to square one here. Let's throw this mask out. Okay. Let's just delete. All right, we're gonna get our object selection tool. We're just gonna select these guys again. Real quick. Okay, and then we're gonna go down here and say make a mask. Boom. There you go.
Wow, okay.
All right, now we start our correction. Okay, so above this, we're gonna get a curve, okay? Now, by doing anything with this curve, it's just affecting everything, right? So we want to clip it. So we go down here, we hit the little clip. Now when I do it, it's just doing the birds. You want to make those birds a silhouette, you know, that's pretty easy. You can just go like that. If you want silhouette birds, that's pretty easy to do. Highlight going on them. Like maybe there's a little front fill. You had a flash on your camera. You know, you can play with it that way. So, you know, it's up to you what you want to create. If you wanted to make it really easy, you could just, instead of using this, let's turn this off. The easiest way you can make a silhouette would be to go down here, get a solid color. Okay. Make it black or whatever color you want. Maybe you wanted it a little warm. You could do that. That would be the easiest way to make them silhouette. Just pick a color and make it that way. And the nice thing about these is they're interactive, so you don't like that color, well, let's go to black, okay. There. So now you got black. So. And then maybe you don't like where this horizon line is, so you grab your background, unlock it. And then with your move tool, you can move it up and down. Maybe you want it down here or over here. You know, or up over in here, in which case you're gonna have to transform it a little bit to fill the space. There, I think that's a little nicer. There you go. So once you get the elements in, you're gonna start doing this dance of making things bigger, smaller, brighter, darker, correcting, and then toward the end, you start making them the same color palette, so they all look like they belong there. And if there's a gross difference in the grain of the photos that you shot, then you throw a grain layer on top of that. To do that, we go all the way up to the top. Here, then we just add a new layer. Okay, it's not clipped to anything, so it's gonna go all over everything. Because if you clip it, it's gonna look like that. You don't want that. You want it just to go over everything. Okay. So now we're gonna fill that with 50% gray. So in your fill panel, you just go down here and instead of black, you just go 50% gray, hit OK. It doesn't look like 50% gray, but let's have a look. Took a jump for some reason. There we go. Okay. And generally what I like to do is go in 100%. To get there, you just double click your magnifier and then we go to our filter and we go down to noise, add noise. And usually around 2 to 4 or 5 seems to be enough. Okay, and then you're going to want to change this to overlay. You can see that noise, especially in the darks. Now, if that noise is a little too strong, what I would do is go into filter and I go to blur. And go down to Gaussian blur. And just get about 0.3, somewhere in there. 0.2, 0.3. There you go. That looks pretty good. So I'll give you a preview. There, now it's not so hard. See, so if I undid that, see, it gets a lot harder. Let's redo it. Looks more like film grain.
Looks more like,
Film grain, rather than just noise. Yeah.
you know where the term Gaussian comes from?
It's a algorithm for that particular kind of blur. So I don't know if it's somebody's name or what. I don't remember the history, but
It's like one of the first words I learned in Photoshop.
it was Gaussian, yeah. Yeah.
Can you bring that so we can see the whole?
Yeah, quickest way is double click the hand, boom, fills the screen.
Just astounding. What a great example. Thank you.
Well, great picture. It's kind of long.
So there you go. I kind of like that better than what you started with. So same elements, just a different take. So play around. Make them too big, then bring them down.
You
Yeah.
saw that instantly.
Yeah,
Can you save that from?
sure. Yes, ma'am. All right, we'll save it. All right. Good.
Was that a building in Japan or?
I don't know where that was from. I just grabbed a stock shot. I sent you guys some stock links in the last email.
Yeah.
It came from one of those. I just grabbed a couple things and I thought maybe we'd play around, and so I just put this together. So. Let's see,
What an amazing program.
let's see, do we have anybody else? Yes, we do. We got Windows and we got Pat's, or not Pat, Paula. So let's look at Paula's real quick and then go to Windows and then I think they'll be kicking us out of here.
We showed a book cover that Chris needed. We could not use the other one because the Library of Congress won't use anything with AI in it.
Right.
They don't allow it. So this was 2 shots that I had. I had a fireworks shot that had a lot of smoke and then a picture of a railroad car.
Mhm.
And I basically used the mask layer and just moved from black and white to move things around and bring things out.
You could almost call it the past state of Maui. If you look at the type, unfortunately, yeah. Well, worked together nice. I like it as a black and white. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so let's let our imaginations roll here, gang. All right, let's go to Wendell. So, start with this guy.
That's a steampunk photo from a few years ago.
Gee, I didn't know Canon was that old.
I did this thing's actually got his camera.
Yeah, I can see that. That was fun. Okay, so you got that element, and you got the background. Somebody up there having fun, and you put them together. There you go.
The lighting was similar.
Mhm.
That's why I picked that particular subject in
Mhm.
the foreground.
Yeah, so this particular one would marry better if you warmed this up a little bit to this background. Just a little bit. Yeah, it's close, but
Yeah.
it just a little chalkier and a little bluer. Yeah, so it doesn't
Yeah.
quite look believable yet. You're about 90% there.
Mhm.
So while you still have your layers, clip the layer of your color correction to him and work to blend him in, interactively blend him in a little better color wise.
Mhm.
And then maybe you might wanna play with contrast a little bit. Cause it looks like he's a little contrastier than the background is.
Well, yeah, well, lessen the contrast a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and you'll be there. Okay. And then the other one you brought in, I've seen this
That's the one.
way back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's kind of fun. So you took these different elements and shot them on
Yeah, I
tabletop.
just concluded, setup, the tabletop setup that I used to get the things. Now this, like you talked about, in fact, about setting perspective lines going to a vanishing point on the horizon. That's
Correct.
basically what I did with using the line tool in Photoshop to set up this. And the lines were all on the layers, so I
Mhm.
could make them disappear. But then I'd have a line at the top of the album going each way, and then just fit the albums in between, use the move tool to get them sized. And
So you had to skew them then? Did you have to?
Maybe a little bit, but he set them up in the angle that he wanted them to be to begin with, so he had a lot less work. So all the ones on the left go this way, all the ones on the right go this way, and the one in the end is straight on.
yeah,
That makes it a lot easier to work on. I've done them where they're all this way and you gotta make them look that way. That's a lot harder, but, this way you're more than halfway there to begin with.
yeah, all I had to do is get the right angle that fit with the layout that I established. I kind of sketched it out ahead of time, so I had the angles
Mhm.
that I needed. And then the black and white background was just a random picture that I had from the Bluegrass Festival that kind of related to music, so I stuck it in.
Okay, yeah.
All the brown base there was totally created in Photoshop. Lines and colors.
Yep. Nice. Alrighty. Think that's everybody. So, let me stop sharing here and I'm gonna quit recording.